Hey, Successfuls. Jolene here. Today, we're diving deep into the world of inspiration and purpose as Kelly and I talk all about Simon Sinek's groundbreaking concept, Start with Why.
This is the Success Through Community podcast. Okay, so we're going back into the brain of Simon Sinek for this episode because
That makes me happy.
it makes me happy too. And this time I actually listened to the audiobook, and this is one of those times where I have to admit I think I liked it better because I was listening to it from him as opposed to reading it myself. And that's rare because, I've said many things on this podcast about how I feel about audiobooks, and especially how I feel about audiobooks that are narrated by the author, because it's not always a good thing. But I think because Simon is such an engaging speaker,
Yeah.
it works for him, Um, and okay, this is a silly side note, but I keep forgetting that he's British. Okay. And when he talks, especially because I did have him at 1.2, I'm not going to lie, not because he's overly slow when he talks, but just because I was trying to get through the book a little bit faster. But he doesn't always sound British. So, there are
No.
certain words that, he'll say, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you're British. While I'm listening to the book, this keeps happening. So it's like,
That's funny because I had no idea.
yeah,
And
because
every
it
time
doesn't
I've
come up.
watched his videos, I've listened to his TED Talks,
Uh-huh.
all that stuff, I've never really clued in. Does he live in the States?
I think he might at this point, but he just has a very Americanized accent at this
Very
point.
much so.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if that was an intentional choice or if that just kind of happened because he was around people in America for so long. I'm not sure, but there are certain words that he'll say that he'll typically he'll drop the R at the end of a word or something, which is a very, very British accent thing. And I'll just be like, my brain will just have this moment where it goes, oh yeah, you're British. And then I just keep going. Just random. But I really liked listening to it from his perspective because he's one of those people that does give you the inflection in the right places. And so he
Yeah.
draws my attention to certain things that
Mhm.
maybe I wouldn't have paid as close attention to if I was reading it myself. So if you're, deciding between the two, when it comes to Simon, I think you're pretty safe with an audiobook.
I think that's so great. I'm just going to go on a side note here and join in on your tangent because we tend to do this every time we listen to an audiobook. And the
mhm.
book I'm currently listening to right now is an audio, but I also have the hard copy. I tried reading the hard copy, started with the audio, and it's read by the author, and she reads it like it's a novel. And I am so engaged and in love with listening to this book.
Mm.
But reading it, I was like, yeah, I could put it down. But listening, she's just so good. We'll talk about her another time, but it
Yeah.
makes such a difference when you have someone who is passionate about what they're saying and not
hmm
just reading.
I agree. And the thing is, you would think, and I realize, by the way, that I have not said the name of the book yet, but if you clicked to listen to this episode, you already know because it was somewhere in the title. So I will say it in a minute, though. But I think that you would assume that any author, especially when you're talking about books like this, not novels, because novels are a totally different kind of thing to read.
Oh, whole other ball game.
That's
Yeah.
almost more like acting, right? But when it comes to these kinds of books, you would think that the author would automatically speak with passion because
Hmm.
they felt passionate enough to
Right.
write the book, right? But I think, it just goes to show you that just because somebody is really, really wise and knowledgeable in one thing does not automatically make them an engaging speaker.
True.
And it doesn't automatically make them, not that they can't learn it, because we learned from Brendan Burchard, you can learn pretty much any skill set if you, have a plan and you practice it and all of that. But so just, a word of encouragement to personal development, business development authors. If you're going to read your own audiobook, take a class or two. I'm just saying, because it helps us to engage with your purpose, your why, foreshadowing of, what caused you to write this book, because we can feel your passion in that way. And I think that's
Yeah.
really kind of helpful. Um,
Absolutely. I think it really brings it out and makes it so much more enjoyable. And you learn
yeah,
more when you're as engaged as they are.
I think so too. And this was the first time where even though there were so many nuggets of gold, I was able to not feel like I was tied to my notebook all the time. Like I definitely went back and, made notes about things. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel as much like I needed to write every single word because a lot of it was
Right.
like an overall concept. It wasn't like follow this step by step process, right?
Yeah, I love that about most of Simon's knowledge is kind of like that, which I
Right.
think is kind of great.
Well, and I'll get to when I get to talking about the book a little bit later, um, why I think he's like that. Because
Oh, yay.
I think that's intentional. I don't think that's an accident at all. But anyways,
Nice.
I've foreshadowed it enough times now. I am talking about start with why, starting with why. I think it's
Start
starting
with
with why.
why.
Is it start with why? See, I wrote
I
that,
think
but then
it's
I
start
thought
with
maybe
why.
I just said it wrong. Okay, hang on. I'm going to look it up because let's be right. Okay, Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Okay.
Perfect.
And there's a lot of things that I could talk about this book. I mean, yeah, I could do an entire podcast series on this book, I think.
I
But
think we could. Yep.
yeah, but I think one of the things that he brought to my attention at the very beginning was how many of us, myself included, are unintentionally using manipulation to sell.
Ooh, yes, yes.
And I do want to back up for a second, though, because he is not saying that all manipulation is bad. And I will explain that in a minute.
Yeah.
He's not saying that in like a, oh, you shouldn't do that because, there are definitely those types of manipulation. Don't get me wrong. There is bad manipulation. But his point is more that when we use things like FOMO,
Mm,
or when we use things like discounting services, or especially if we do that for a certain time period to create urgency or whatever, that we are in essence manipulating, right?
yep.
And it's not necessarily a negative to do it, but we need to acknowledge that it is a short-term benefit for us. It is not a long-term solution, because you cannot keep up that level of FOMO forever. If you continue to do things that create urgency or continue to discount things, then they stop having any meaning because they'll just wait for the next one, right?
Yep.
So it's not something that you can do all the time.
You know,
And
I want
no,
to
go for
jump
it.
in there and I have to say I'm quite surprised that a lot of small business owners and solopreneurs do this because and I'm going to say this from my own experience, I have kind of countered the manipulation. So, when you click on something and you go to buy something and you put in a little bit of an email or a little bit of information, and then you kind of change your mind or you get distracted,
Mm-hmm.
a day later, you're going to get a follow-up email going, "Hey, I noticed you kind of started, but you didn't finish buying my product. Why don't I give you a 10% discount to get you to finish it?" I've done that on purpose, knowing
Mm-hmm.
full well I'm going to get an even better deal down the road. So,
Yeah,
why would we put that out there as business owners, knowing as purchasers we are being, a part of that
manipulated.
manipulation,
Yeah.
being
I,
manipulated? Yeah,
I think there's some validity to it in the fact that when we are a new entity to someone, they are not, I mean, sometimes we need to give them a little encouragement to give us a try,
right.
right? um I think if we have it set up and automated to do that every single time, like every abandoned cart email does that,
Yeah,
then yeah, we are now training our existing customers to continue doing that.
exactly.
But if we can set it up in a way that, like, hey, if this is a first time purchase for you, right? And make it like an enticement. I mean, he's talking about like some of the manipulation, but in again, not necessarily bad, is the concept of carrots and sticks, right? Either I'm going to entice you with something like a discount or whatever, or the stick side of it being like fear, creating that
Right.
FOMO, peer pressure, whatever. Um, and I think that I intentionally have a free trial on my membership because even as a mentor to other people, I always encourage that they test drive a tool when and where possible before buying it. Because just because they like me or they like something on my website or whatever does not necessarily mean that my membership is the right fit for them
100%. Yeah.
or the right fit for them right now, right? So, I mean, I personally don't do the discount thing. I do the free trial so they get a chance to try it without, any kind of, well, I mean, they do commit because I do a credit card free trial intentionally because
Yeah.
I don't want to devalue my product. Let's put it that way. And
Hmm.
I think when it's a first purchase, I think it does kind of make sense because you're giving them an easier in, right? You're letting them know, like, I know you're still figuring me out. And even if I were to declare my why to you from the beginning, like, how do you don't know me well enough to trust that that's true. So maybe if I make it a little easier for you to experience my products, then you can see that I stick to what I say inside of the program or inside of the course, right? So I don't think it should be something that's like literally every time someone goes to make a purchase and then doesn't, they get a discount because you're right. I've done the same thing. And, we know people who, I'm not going to name names, but we know people who intentionally play like, what's it called? The food services like HelloFresh or whatever. They play roulette with that based on
Yeah.
who's giving them the best deal. And honestly,
In the
like
moment.
that's really smart as a consumer.
That
So,
is brilliant as a consumer. And
yeah.
see, there's different variations of manipulation. I think by, playing roulette with a service where, if I go to service A, I'm going to get this deal right now. But then service B is going, hey, come back, we'll give you this deal. So I cancel A, I go to B, and now A is going, hey, wait, come back, come back.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of keep going back and forth because they keep offering me all these amazing free things, free delivery, free items, all these good things that entice me to go back. And I know full well I'm going to be bouncing. I don't think that that's a bad manipulation of the system because that system is there to try and get you to keep going back. And if they just keep doing it to you, then that's what they want, right? Like you said earlier, they're training their end user that this is how we work. So if you just keep doing it, we're just going to keep doing it too. And I don't
Right.
think that as a user, I don't think it's a bad thing
No.
because that's basically what they've taught us to do. So that is the good side of manipulation, but there is bad manipulation out there. And I'm not sure if he covers it or goes over kind of like the difference between, good manipulation as a business owner and bad manipulation as a business owner. Um, but I do think that there's definitely two different things, two different levels of manipulation out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't go into a lot of detail on it because that's not the point of the book, right? But I think, yeah, he's very clear that look, there's bad manipulation and then there's quote good manipulation. It's not
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
necessarily good, it's just not bad, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
his
Exactly.
overall point though is that when your strategy for sales is any form of manipulation, and one thing that he included in there that honestly kind of caught me by surprise. I mean, obviously like fear, peer pressure, creating urgency, all of that I understand that's manipulation, but he also included aspirational. And I found that interesting because that to me feels like a positive, but when I looked at it from the perspective of what he's saying, it is still manipulation. So aspirational meaning if you say in your marketing copy or whatever, like by purchasing this product or purchasing this course or whatever, you're going to become this, or you're going to find that. I mean, to use what I'm saying, like you're going to find that balance, right?
Right.
That's an aspirational goal, but it is still somewhat manipulation because the opposite of all of this stuff, and his point is to, as a business owner, inspire someone
Mm.
so that and because it's the point is to find customers who believe what you believe in the things that are relevant to your industry, right? You don't have to
Right.
only find people who believe every single thing you believe, because good luck with that. But finding people who believe what you believe in that relevant topic, because those are the people who are going to become your biggest fans. They're going to buy anything you put out, right? And you have the responsibility of living up to that and always like putting out things that that also are in line with what you said you believe, right? But that's where you get like that contagious level of word of mouth is only from, the inspirational type of marketing and sales. And it's honestly not even really something that I mean, it obviously is marketing, but it's not something that you treat as marketing. It's more of authenticity, and it
Mm,
becomes that attraction marketing, if that makes sense.
it does. I kind of get the vibe that like an aspirational manipulation or tactic, I guess, would be getting people to sign up, and it would be very short term if you are not inspirational to keep that momentum flowing, to keep them going and keep them going. And if you do it in the reverse and inspire them to purchase and to be a part of, your program or whatever, then that's when you're going to get those raving fans who will always buy what you want because you are inspiring them and encouraging them to continue and maintain that momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to acknowledge that, like, throughout the entire book, like, he brings up lots of different examples, but he often does the comparisons between Apple and Microsoft, and not saying that either one of them is better or worse, honestly, but more just talking about why you have the Apple lovers and why you have the Microsoft lovers and why like they don't ever cross. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's because of the fact that both of them have a very clear why.
Mm,
Although he does acknowledge that like there have been times in both companies where they have diverted from their why somewhat. So they tend to lose focus when their leader is not around. So like for a while Steve Jobs kind of left Apple, and even obviously now he's passed away, but he had left Apple for a while because of some philosophical differences with the new CEO that he brought in. He ended up leaving, and Apple got completely off course because they didn't have that focus on their why. And any Apple lover will tell you they know that the why behind Apple is that concept of think differently, that innovation, right?
right.
Whereas Bill Gates had a very strong why too. It was very different from Apple, but his was all about accessibility and having a PC on every desk and in every home. And when you look at both companies and you look at like how they market, but also just their core products and everything like that, whichever camp you're in, you can see their why in reality in their business. Now, both of them are maybe a little more off track now because Steve Jobs is obviously gone again. And so they don't have the same focal point, I
Guiding
guess. They
star.
don't, yeah,
Yeah.
there you go, guiding star. And Bill Gates is no longer like massively involved at Microsoft. And so they can sometimes lose that too. And so you can see that in the employees' loyalty as well. You're not going to see a Microsoft employee go work at Apple or vice versa because they have such different philosophies that an employee is not going to be happy at both places, right? Because it's just not where not the culture that they're looking to be in.
Right.
So, but one of the things that one of the concepts that he brings up is it's called the golden circle, and it's all about like the kind of the order of operations. Like I think of this a little bit formulaically, as far as what our priorities need to be as the figurehead in our own business of what am I looking for, like I guess our priorities in general, right? We're supposed to start with why. So if you were to draw, I drew it for myself while he was talking, so I'm like looking at it right now. But if you were to draw a target with 3 lines, right? Your center should be your why. And that's always the first question that you ask yourself about everything. And then the next ring out is the how. And then the next ring out from that is the what. So the why, and this is one of those situations where the why is not exactly what I was always told that it was. So if you've ever, like when you're a brand new entrepreneur, especially I think if you started out in the world of like network marketing or something like that, where you had a team that was trying to coach you and help you be successful, they talk about your why all the time. But at least in my
But
experience,
yeah,
the why that they were focused on was the why, my personal why, the why that keeps me motivated,
yes.
not the why that Simon is talking about, which is still somewhat personal, but it's more your, to go back to his own terms in a later book that he hadn't written yet, hit your just cause.
Yeah.
Like your why is what you believe in. So like his why, and he said it enough times that I should know it verbatim, but I don't. But essentially his why is to inspire people to do the things that inspire them.
Oh, I like that.
Okay? So it's clearly his motivation, but it's not about him.
Yes.
So like the why that I was always kind of trained to think about was all about me. It was completely self-centered. It was, why am I doing this? Because I want financial freedom, because I want location freedom, because I want whatever. Like that was the why I was always told to cultivate and focus on. But now I'm realizing, no, it's more about what is the belief that I have that caused me to start my business in the first place. And if you have your why clear, not only for yourself, but in your messaging, then this is where that attraction marketing starts to happen, because the people who think the same thing as you are going to be attracted to you and your products or your services or whatever they are. And then the next level,
100%.
yeah, and then the next level is figuring out the how, right? Like, how am I going to further that why? And then the what is literally, so like the what, like the specific products and things like that. So one of the ways that he described it, so your why is like your purpose, your how, which comes next, is your values. And I put a pin in that because there's something that he said about that I really liked. And then your what is literally everything you say and do. So not just the things that you put out as products and stuff, but like the captions that you put on social media, like all of that needs to come back to your why. And if it doesn't, not only is that not authentic to you, but it's not going to attract the right people.
And that's gold, right? I mean, you
The golden
brought this
circle
up
is
when,
what it is. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, when you brought this up in the Tech Savvy Facebook group,
I did. Yeah.
and you brought it up with the actual saying the exact same. I'm reading this book and I've realized that I've been looking at my why all wrong. And I commented on my why and how I done my why. And I realized that, once we decided we were going to, record this book and everything, I did a little bit of research and did some digging. And you know why my why is different from what everyone expected was because Simon actually has an amazing video out there that explains the golden circle. And he, with a whiteboard and a marker, and he
I've
just
seen it
goes through
actually.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I saw that years ago, and that's how come my why was so different. But when I first started, yes, it was all about me. And I would have to say, and I'm willing to put money on the fact that I would say a very large chunk, I would say even three-quarters or more of the online business owners out there, whether they did start with the network marketing or they started with their own little small company, who are just starting out and are searching for everything they can on the internet on how to run their company, they are going to run into the start with your why. Because I want my kids to have a legacy, because I want to, take my kids to Disneyland first class. I want time freedom. I want a second house. I want, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's
It's
very
not bad
self-centered.
stuff, but it's not
No,
going to
but
have the
that is
effect that we think it is.
Yeah, and that is the majority of the information that is out there, which is why, everybody who is starting a book, this should be high school kids should read this book.
Yeah.
It's not just about business, but it's got such good core information and values there for,
Hmm.
living. And then when you do start with that why and make it about everybody else, whether it's business or, just serving in life, then it all will come back to you. It's the golden rule, the golden circle. I think that there is a very clear connection there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, so there are a couple more things. I can already tell that this episode could be really long, but I'm going to
Mhm.
try not to make it super long. I'm going to touch on a couple of other things because I honestly want all of the people that are listening to this right now to listen to this book. And I said listen, not read. I
Yeah,
I do think I probably will still get a hard copy of this book because I feel like I'd like to be able to refer back to it. And as much as I love the Audible little 30-second clippy clip things, it's not the same. So I do think that I still probably will get the book, but I love the audiobook for this. So I'm highly encouraging that. Um, but there was okay, there's a quote that I absolutely want to say because I feel like it is the quote that makes that like sums up this entire book in a way. And then I want to go back to when I touched on the values thing because there was something there. And then there's a couple other things. Anyways, so the quote though that I want to read is the goal of business should not be to do business with everyone who needs what you have. And I just want to sidebar here and say, listen to that closely because he's not saying this is not the same thing as don't market to everyone or you'll market to no one. That's not what he's talking about here. What he's saying is not because at this point, if you're talking about who needs what you have, that's already niched down. He's taking it a step further than that. So he says the goal of business should not be to do business with everyone who needs what you have. The goal is to focus on those who believe what you believe. There
let
are
that marinate.
Yeah, let it stick that in your pipe and smoke it. No, but seriously though, because I think about it, I mean, of course I read this, I think about it from the lens of my business, but honestly, I could say that every single business owner needs what I offer because I'm teaching you how to use the tools to run your business. But I am no longer going to try to sell that or even be willing to sell it to people who don't believe what I believe because what I believe is that anyone can learn this stuff if they're willing to put in the work. And
True.
even if somebody needs to learn it, if they don't believe that, if they don't believe that they can learn it, or if they don't believe that anyone could learn it, then they're not going to get anything out of my product. So I'm not going to sell to them and I'm not going to even attempt to attract them. It's not my job to convince you to believe in yourself. It's my job to help those who do believe in themselves learn the things that they need to learn. Right. And I think that for me is a huge perspective shifter because I can now focus all of my content and my copy to that. I mean, we talk about client avatar and your ideal client and whatever you want to call it so much in the business world. But I feel like this quote is everything when it comes to figuring out your ideal client. It's everything. They
It
have to
really, really
believe
is.
in what you sell. If they don't believe in it, they're a waste of your time.
I think that definitely it really, really weighs in a lot on if you're selling services,
Yes.
such as coaching or, creative services like photography. But I also think that it comes down to if you are creating or selling a product. If you are selling, I don't know. Oh, you know what? This is a good example. I came across a small business the other day where she's I don't know what you call it, seamstress. I think she makes clothes. A tailor. I don't know what she's officially called. I apologize. But her niche is it's all of her clothes are related to a horror movie of some sort.
That's
And she
awesome.
came out with this hotel line where, this beautiful skirt is in the same pattern as the carpet in The Shining. It's just, it's
Oh,
so niche.
wow.
It's so amazing. But the thing is, if she doesn't believe in what she's making, even though it's a tangible item, if she doesn't believe that that needs to be out there in the world for people to recognize, see, and adore, nobody's going to buy it,
Yeah.
right? And no one's going to make the connection either. Like,
Right. They're going
would
to be
you
like,
make the
wow, that's quite an interesting pattern for a skirt there. Like
Yeah, but
they won't get it, but the people who do get it will be like, oh my gosh, I have to have that right now.
exactly. So it isn't just for services. I think you have to really
No.
believe in everything that you're providing. And then yeah, they will flock to you.
Well, and it's definitely not just about services because all of his examples are products, tangible products. And he
I love
even
that.
says that like your product, whether it's a service, a tangible item, whatever, should be tangible proof of your why. Like
I
that's
really like
exactly what
that.
its purpose is, right?
Yeah.
Um so yeah, so I really that quote to me was like hugely important. It will definitely be the quote that goes on Instagram. Hey, Successfuls, it's Kelly. Dive even deeper into Start With Why by Simon Sinek with us over on the free Patreon community. You'll hear the rest of this conversation, including the celery test. Yeah, that's right. I said celery. And how that is going to help you to clarify your why. See you over there. If you guys want to connect with us on social media, Jolene, do you want to tell them how they can do that?
Sure. You can follow us on Instagram at Success Through Community, or join our free or paid communities over at Patreon, which is patreon.com/STC Productions.
The best way that you can support the podcast is to make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening and leave us a review. That's the only way that new people will find and join our community. The Success Through Community podcast is hosted by Kelly Gable and Jolene Mills, and all episodes are solely the opinions of the respective host. Our sound production and editing is done by Kelly Gable, and all visual creative, including our logo, was created by Jolene Mills. The Success Through Community podcast is an STC production.